Okay, what I did to make these angled cuts for these popsicle sticks, I needed a angle, so I basically took a popsicle stick, and before I did any of that, I would check the squareness of the popsicle stick and the flatness, because I wanted it as flat as possible so it wasn't warped or anything like that. Once I figured that out, basically traced over the edge that I wanted, and these are basically right there to the edge, so I take off these round sections. I take the line, cut it, mark it off, and I take these and took this pot so I could catch all the little pieces. It doesn't work as well as I thought it would, but it does catch some of them. Take the snipper, I lined it right up on the first mark so I get my angle, cut it so I get nice and nice angle there. Once I had that first angle, my ruler, based on how long these are supposed to be, was 4 inches and 1/32 of an inch. So I took that, lined it up with the long edge right down here. I just basically put it right on the line and a little bit farther in, because where the line is drawn is actually makes a longer space in the middle when you cut it. So you have to file stuff down. So I cut it just a little bit shorter than there. So it's like 4 2/32 or 1/16. And so I just want to cut it at the same angle. So I'm going to measure it out. And I go on and measure it. Right where that edge is at the top is 4 1/32 of an inch. So that one's done. Okay, doing these straight ones is pretty easy because it's just cutting it flush with the length that you need, which is going to be 3 inches and 19/32. Eyeball it, cut it off flush. Cut it off flush, and then I just put it right down here on the T-square, line it up across on the top of the T-square, just like that. Nice and square. Squeeze it, and then I kind of grab the end there because I got enough room on there. Just remember, don't get your fingers stuck in there because, well, it'll take off some skin. And so, I just cut it. Cut that piece off, toss it away, and now I have my piece. It's going to fit right in there. That's how easy it is to do. Now the next step will be to get rid of this template because the one I have right here is not straight. I thought I was getting it straight when I was lining it up, and when I put my straight edge on it I had a bow in it, so I can't really use this one. So I made another one, and I used my straight edge, which was a metal straight edge, because the wooden yardstick sucks. It had a bow in it, you can't trust them. So get a metal straight edge. I used one that was actually a 4 foot long straight edge so I could go from one end to the other and not have a problem with getting it lined up straight. And then I pinned it down into some 2-inch foam with some straight pins, put some tape down on it. I'm going to use that as my work surface. And here it is, mounted to a 2-inch piece of foam. And I just put a couple straight pins up on the corners, lined it all up, used the straight edge on each piece, one piece at a time. Cut out the extra white space on the paper, lined it all up, and now it looks like it's ready to start building a bridge. What I did was I pinned in the top and bottom braces that I'm going to put the popsicle sticks on. And why I did that was because these sticks are not as straight as they should be, but that's why we're putting these on here, to keep them level and straight. So some of them had a slight bow in them, and they weren't going to match up with the plan, so I pinned them down here on the end, on 3 sides, the end and top and bottom. But on this side, they're not quite exactly 24 inches each. So I have a little section here where you can see where the plan has the gap where the two 24-inch pieces are, and they match right up there in the center, so I'd use that as a center and started from that point and then pin the other end. That's how far left I want it to go. And when I got all that set up, found out where the bends were, lined up where it was straight at, pinned on both sides of there, bent either way, here and here, because I wanted it to bend inward. This one here needed to bend outward, so I have a pin here and one right down here. So now my top and bottom pieces are straight, and I can start gluing this down. What I'll do is I'll just glue each piece where it's going to meet up, smooth it out with another popsicle stick so it's thin. I don't get a lot of squeezed out glue, and if I do, just use a paper towel and wipe it off. And that's the process. Let's go from probably I'm going to start from the middle and work my way to the end. That way I know that my middle is going to be the strongest, or at least the straightest, because that's where I want it the straightest, because that's where it's going to have the most force when it bends. Well, invariably there's always a problem. Even though I've got these beams straight, and I thought I cut all these stringers exactly the same size, not all of them are going to be exactly the same size. It is kind of difficult to do that. I was just using a regular clipper, but try and eyeball a lot of it, and you only get close as in modeling and hand grenades. But pick a side, any side. I'm choosing the bottom side as my straight edge side. So I took just a regular popsicle stick and laid it up against the side here and pushed all the pieces down so that this bottom side is lined up and flush. When I'm done and it's all dry, I can sand this top side down so it's all flush. Okay, as you can see, I have gotten this whole truss done, from this end all the way down to this end. It goes pretty fast once you have all your pieces cut. I started right here in the middle and worked my way out to the ends. I had a piece of pink foam up here which is sitting over off to the side, still drying, but I took straight pins and pinned into the foam, pins like this, and just held all the pieces in place, made sure they were straight on my template, and then just glued it all down. Pressed it all down with my metal level, which is my straight edge. It's a heavy piece, and it was all nice and level. I just pressed down on all the pieces here, held it there for a minute or two, let it sit there, let it dry for a while, and then the next step was to put one of these 24-inch pieces on top of all these popsicle sticks and sandwich them in and make this joint really, really strong. Now, what I found was that I made a mistake right here on the seam. I decided that since it was right there on the seam, I wanted a stronger joint right on this bar because this was straddling the two halves. And I glued the halves together on the ends, and then I glued this down on top of it. Well, what I did was I doubled up the popsicle sticks. And I found out that I really didn't need to do that. And so here I have a raised popsicle stick right there in the middle, and I didn't want it there because what I wanted to do is take this piece and straddle that seam, and so they would make a strong joint right there in the middle. Well, now it sits taller and I can't do that because then I'd have to raise up all the other popsicle sticks to the same height. And it's like, no, I don't want to do that. So I thought about cutting this out. Well, it's a little tough to do when it's already glued down, and it pretty much would destroy the integrity of this joint. So, since by itself I can't even bend this thing. This thing is stiff enough as it is. I'm not going to have to really put in anything that covers the top of this if I don't want to, at least on this side. On the other side, I'm going to take an old scrap piece about maybe a foot long and put it right evenly on the other side, each side of this seam. So as we do that, I'll show you how far I've gotten so far. Well, as you can see, this is my other piece here, and I've got it pinned in and it's still drying. This is right there in the center. You can see by the shadow that it's the sides are taller than the centerpiece. I just buttered it up against that extra popsicle stick. I could technically put extra popsicle sticks in here and raise it all the way up so it's nice and even. It would just be aesthetic, but since all of this is going to be on the inside of the trestle, it's not even going to be seen, and it may not even be needed there to be functional. But what we're going to do is I'm going to glue down another strip on either side of this down here, the actual top of the this beam or truss, and finish that off. I also was going to take a long piece and put it right up on the top so that the tracks would lay on top of that and would make a stronger bridge from bowing. Well, this bridge is so strong I could probably walk on it when it's done. I don't think I'm going to need that top board at all. So it's going to be just fine by putting that N scale on there. In fact, I probably could run HO and S scale on here if I wanted to, maybe even G scale. It seems like it's a pretty strong bridge so far, and I only have 2 trusses done. It's not even glued together. Well, to glue this down, all I do is put a little glue on where I want to glue it at. Just a small drop is all you need, because some of it's going to press out. You'd go all the way down to the whole length of the board, but basically I just take it, smooth it out Smooth the glue out evenly over the place where it's going to be contacting the two pieces of wood. And you spread it out so it just evenly gets all the surface contact the best it can be. You can have a really good joint once it dries evenly. You keep doing that all the way across for each piece of wood. Both sets of beams on either side glued down and in place. These two are still drying, and I've got them pinned in so that they all line up correctly with the other side, the other board. And this is going to be one really strong beam. It basically looks like an I-beam, or a very strong truss beam, to say the least. The next thing I'd have to do after this is to clean it up. Some of the popsicle sticks, you may cut them a little slightly too long and they need to be trimmed up. So what I did earlier was I sanded the side where the track's going to go down on, so that's nice and flush. And when this is all dry, I'll go and I'll sand down with the power sander and just sand off the nubs that are still sticking up, and everything will be nice and smooth. I have got the trusses completed. I put an extra strip of wood on the outside, on top and bottom, right across the seam of the two halves that came together. And when they're together and lined up, they're supposed to be straight across. And as you notice, they're not quite straight across. You know, they got some that are different angles, they're not quite lining up all the way across. Well, I realized that I used the same template to make the second half. And what I really should have done is take the template up, flip it over upside down, and built it like that. That way it would have been a mirror image of the other side. Well, what I could have done instead of that is take and put the extra piece of wood that I'm putting out here on this side and put it on this side, so that when my beams were flipped over and put together, so they're basically in the same orientation if they're laying on the template, everything lines up. Okay. Now, the good thing is, one side of this bridge is going to be up against a wall. And so, the side you're looking at would be the side everybody else looks at. And the side that nobody else sees would look like this. I have this gap here. Now, I could just take and put some extra popsicle sticks in there to fill up the gap, and it would look just fine. The only thing is, I now have a piece of wood right in the middle, making a separator on the bridge. Which is a good thing, because all I need to do now to make it the same width as the bottom of this, where I want to have it mounted to, would be to stick this 1/8 inch beam piece, or a little spacer, in between each one of them, and I now have the right width for my bridge decking to mount to, and be lined up right on the edges of the strips all the way down. Well, that's the next thing I got to do, is do some sanding of this other truss, get some of the extra bumpy glue that might have leaked out off the edge, flatten out this whole top piece, and once I do that, I can glue on, put in the spacers, put in some spacers down the top and the bottom, and basically brace it up so that it's the same width all the way down. And I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet, but I'm going to figure it out.